And is it getting colder there at the moment?
Yeah, it's a little overcast and cool this morning. Yeah, definitely moving into some colder times.
Colder times. You sound very Aussie. Were you born and bred here?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's country boy, Aussie.
Nice. I love that. So what have you taken from growing up in the country? What is something that you've taken on through what you do and who you are?
I think the best of the Australian culture, and probably is not just unique to Australia, but I think Australians at their heart, they just don't have room for much bullshit. It's just like, can we just settle down a bit and just talk plainly, please? So I think I like to talk as simply as possible and as shortly as possible. There's a lyric from Switchfoot. It says, if we're adding to the noise, please turn off this song. And so I think that kind of fits in with this idea of being an Australian who has a platform. Just don't add to the noise. Can you just talk and then stop talking? That would be useful, please. So I think that's kind of
I love that.
Hand in hand with growing up in the bush.
I love that. That's totally awesome. And by the way, welcome to the decision table, because this is all we do is have a conversation. And it's so awesome to have you here and to get to know you. And I love, what you just said about, let's not add to the noise. What is the noise that you're seeing today?
Well, in my space, so the personal development space, I think it's just very lightweight and fluffy a lot of the time. So a lot of people saying a lot of things that I don't think represent wisdom, that are more prone to behavior management, that are more prone to overemphasizing self-discipline and accountability as the go-to strategies for lasting change. So I think they're noise just because they never are capable of producing transformation. So end up disillusioning people and making them feel like change is not possible. It's just something in the realm of fairy tale. So that's the noise I hear.
So many things we can dive into there. But go back to the fluff. What do you see as fluff at the moment?
The mental health fluff, particularly, I'm curious about, because I think there's more conversation about mental health than ever before, but then more mental health issues than ever before. So to me, the fluff is the conversation about mental health, because it's not helping. Let's bring awareness to the issue. It is not creating any kind of change. It is fluff. It is noise. There is a conversation, absolutely. It demands a conversation, and a clear conversation, and an intelligent conversation, but it's not the prevailing conversation that's being had.
Okay, you can't go into that conversation and we just skim by that. One of the things that I talk about, and this could be a really interesting conversation on the decision table today, but one of the areas I talk about is that we do need to create an awareness. So why, and by the way, that doesn't mean we stay there, but I think it's a great starting point. Right. And it's a part where if we don't know what we don't know, then we don't know it. But if we do, then there's a responsibility. And so there's a process then to go forward. But I think that it starts with awareness.
But what kind of awareness? So I think there's layers of awareness, and the awareness that I see is awareness of part of the problem. And so I think sometimes being aware of part of the problem is worse than having no awareness. Ignorance is bliss is a prevailing statement for a reason. So I think sometimes the awareness people come to in terms of mental health often leaves them with a label and leaves them more stuck than they started with. So I'm not sure that.
Okay, so let's just be clear on what we are saying awareness is, because maybe it's actually in that piece. Because are you saying someone who is aware is someone who is woke? That real spoken sort of, I don't know. There's this flavor of people going, I'm woken, I'm awoke, or whatever it is right now, right? Are we talking about that? Or for me, an awareness is a lens in which we start looking through and we create an awareness around.
Yeah, sure. I think that the true awareness is an accurate understanding of what the real problem is to see clearly. If you can see clearly, well, that's always a gift. That's always going to give you more choice. And, we're inherently good doing the best we know how. So if you can see clearly and have more choice, you will make better choices. The awareness that is often spoken about, especially with mental health, I think is culturally rewarded, but not very useful in terms of solving anything meaningful.
Okay, so tell me more. What is it? I'm trying to understand where you're coming from with this whole
Sure.
awareness piece. I want to be aware of your awareness. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say right now.
So when I get the privilege of being invited into someone's world to have a conversation about change, about the areas of pain,
Yes.
my go-to questions are, okay, so what problem are you most looking to solve right now? Because typically,
Sure,
even that's a good question, because it's like,
yeah.
okay, well, let's be precise, let's be specific. What's going on? But often people answer that question by talking about where the pain's showing up. So I've got pain in my relationship, so I think the problem I'm solving is a relationship problem, or I've got pain in my mental health. I think the problem I'm solving is an anxiety problem, or I've got pain in my finances. But the second question I ask is, well, are you sure that's actually the problem? Because if it's not actually the problem, then you'll go ahead, try and solve it, and you'll create a bunch more pain for yourself, because you'll waste all the resources on treating something that's actually the symptom rather than the cause. So I'm convinced that there is a deeper awareness around the true nature of the problem, and if you can be precise about what's actually going on for you, then all time, money, energy, effort is greatly rewarded, because you're solving the bottom of it.
So maybe the question or the thinking is actually less around, well, it's still around the awareness piece, but it's actually around the lenses or the filters we're using. Are we not using the right ones? Are we needing to use different ones? Could there be, lenses or filters that are more beneficial for us to use?
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction. I think you're right. We all see through a lens, and that's unavoidable. We're subjective creatures. So the more objective we can be, and the more willingness we are for objective voices to examine our own problems and see where our blind spots are and see where we've stopped in our awareness, the more our growth will be accelerated. I like Dr. Robert Keegan, chair of human behavior at Harvard. His quote is that the subject-object switch is the thing that accelerates human growth more than anything else, which quite simply is just, we are subjective creatures. We're going to see the world subjectively through our own lens, but every moment spent seeing it objectively, every moment spent outside our own story, looking back in, we're going to see stuff that we couldn't ever see in our own story. So any way you do that, but through mindfulness, meditation, involving a coach, a mentor, being open for wisdom that can get you out of your preconceived idea about who you are and what's going on, you will inevitably see stuff that sets you free.
Yeah. And my thinking and the work that I do has really pulled onto this whole lenses, because I think that there is a lot of the old school teaching, the old school way of doing things, where we are more in here's the 3 principles to be the best leader that you can be, rather than going, what lenses do we need to use to start asking questions, to have a different conversation? And that's what I talk about when I'm talking about awareness. And I think, there is this, and it's a white paper that I'm writing at the moment around the whole need for a new approach to leadership. And I believe that there is the old school way of thinking, the old school way, the presuming and going into biases and conditionings, which are ways in which we have built systems, processes, thinkings, behavior, and that there is this need for a new change. What is your thinking around that?
Well, my work with insecurity as the sole focus is kind of, that's, I'm ruined for anything else. So I run everything through the lens of in what way is unresolved insecurity actually inhibiting the way you can see? So what way is it meaning you're protecting yourself or trying to prove yourself, so it creates difficulty around seeing clearly? So I think that is one of the biggest challenges I see to the lenses people use. It's too dangerous to see clearly. It's too dangerous to turn the lights on and actually have a look at what's going on in case you reveal something bad about yourself, in case you reveal a weakness or an inadequacy somewhere. So I think it's important to face insecurity first so that you then are able to see clearly no matter what you see.
Yeah. But I think that comes down to the individual being willing to look within and go, why have I struggled in this area? What is this pain that continues to come from? And what do I need to change for that to no longer be part of my story? And I think that it's easy to go, okay, it's all about everyone else, but it comes back to us being, and I go back into the individual being, the better I am as an individual, the more I can help, bring change to a community and then across to the globe. So there's this sort of domino effect, right? But I think, you bring up this interesting thing of something where as humans, we don't tend to want to go to pain. We don't tend to want to go to something that has maybe, causes us grief, but it's kind of served us, right? And so we keep doing it. And I know that I'm known for disrupting patterns. And one of the trickiest pieces is when someone isn't willing to want to change, because actually the change, the disruption may create even more pain for a moment or two. But on the other side, oh my goodness, how good is it?
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, it's all about readiness for change. And so I'm non-negotiable about the idea that as a coach, my only way to serve is as giving help as someone who doesn't care about a person. So in my model around solving insecurity, practice 5 is get help from someone who doesn't care. And I think it really addresses
this. What
do
you mean by that?
Well, I think typically we imagine to get help around the sensitive issues in our life, we're going to need someone who really does care and really has a vested interest, and they're going to believe in us and encourage us and support us. I'm convinced those people actually get in the way. Their desire is well-intentioned, but the moment you have someone who wants you to be happy and wants you to be healthy and wants you to be doing better than you are, it's actually not safe to have awareness. It's not safe to be honest with that person, because you could let them down. You could disappoint them. You could not meet their expectation. So then there's a game that's being played. So when I have the privilege of coaching,
by the way, that is such an interesting perspective, and I have not heard that on here. Okay. And I want to question that. Because I am that person that goes, I want the best for you. I want you to be happy. And that doesn't mean that I put my expectations on you, but I can tell you that if I had a choice whether I wanted to see you sad or happy, happy would be my answer. If I wanted to see you not going forward or going forward, then going forward would be my answer. So how does that work?
Yeah, so I do the opposite. I say, I will not lose any sleep over you. I will forget about you. My life's fine. I'm not another person who wants you to do something you don't want to do. I have no vested interest. You cannot please me. You cannot disappoint me. I know I look like someone who cares, but you can't confuse me for someone who gives a shit. And it's provocative and it's offensive. But to me, it creates this opportunity for a clean conversation where the person looking for change is the expert, or they're the real hero in the story, and I'm just the skillful guide. So,
but why can we not have a heart or see them like go, I want the best for them? Where is that not adding benefit but taking away from?
Well, I think the moment that you create, I've decided not to even encourage my clients in the last few years, because I noticed what happened when I started encouraging them when they did something well. It's like, hang on a minute, now if I can be pleased, now I can also be disappointed. Now it is no longer safe to be honest. If they're having a bad week, they're going to dial down the honesty of their answer to me, because what if I don't please, the coach? So I think if I show up as someone who genuinely is cold and disinterested, I won't have any rapport. And if I don't have any rapport, I can't facilitate change. So clearly I care about
that
what I
is
do.
Pretty full on.
Yeah,
If I
care
don't
about.
have rapport, then I can't
No,
facilitate change.
no, that's right, because there'll be barriers. They'll be guarded toward me. So I can't have any guardedness. That's not going to create any
How is
useful
there
conversation.
barriers if I've got rapport?
Sorry?
How is there barriers if I've got rapport?
No, sorry. If you have rapport, there's no barriers. We have an easy
Ah,
conversation. There's a flow. But if I've broken rapport, if you feel like, oh, this person is cold and disinterested, why would I be honest? They don't care about me at all. Then I'm worried. I'm wary. What's happening? So obviously, it's a delicate line. So clearly, I bring my whole heart and soul to the conversation. I just realized, in my opinion, the biggest gift I can give a client is not.
and by the way,
cross
there's
that
no
line.
right or wrong on here. I'm just purely
Yeah.
investigating where this is coming from and how you've come to this, because it's a really interesting perspective.
When I was 12, my dad took me into the shearing shed. So talking about growing up on the farm,
Yeah.
and he asked me if I thought wool burnt. And I'd remembered seeing some ad about pajamas in wool are good for fire. So I thought, no, wool doesn't burn. And he said, well, watch this. So he'd got some wool that had been freshly shorn, and he lit a match underneath his handful of wool, and it caught on fire straight away, much to my surprise. But then he took the match away from the wool, and the fire went out as quickly as it had started. Because it turns out lanolin, the oil in wool, is flammable, but only when exposed to an external flame. And my dad said something to me that I've never forgotten, and that is, that's what it's like working with people a lot of the time. It looks like they're burning, but it's all you.
Yeah.
The moment you stop doing what you're doing, the fire goes out. And that has always stuck with me. And so, I think the biggest gift I can give clients is to empower them and to find internal motivation. So I really don't want to get in the way of that. And the way that I
understand that point. I totally understand that point. My thing is, why does it show that we are not getting in the way or that we're more for them if we are not liking them or not connected in that way? Like, I'm trying to understand that piece.
Because I think if you think about the hero's journey, it's another useful metaphor around this. The guide, we always need a wisdom character. We need a Gandalf, we need a Yoda, we need a Dumbledore, we need a Mr. Miyagi. And when you're watching the movie, you think they're going to be the one that saves the day. But Gandalf's always gone too soon. You're watching it like, like all is lost. How's Frodo going to do this? He's a little hobbit, but Gandalf's always gone too soon, and that is the design, because no one's coming to save you. So I think it's really, I think the biggest danger for coaches, counselors, psychologists is not to confuse the world about who the hero is. And it's a dangerous
I love that piece, by the way. I love that piece because you're right. And it comes down to you having to make decisions. The thing I don't know and I don't understand even still from this conversation is how. So I still stand with what I say, is that I still want the best for you. Here's the thing. What I want, what I believe in you, and the reason that I can see, I've heard it so many times by clients go, Kira Marie, you saw things in me and believed in me way before I could even get to that point, because I did. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to do anything for them, because I can't. It's like taking the horse to the water, right? Like, you can take it to the water. Well, you actually can make it drink because you can give it a salt thing and it's going to want to drink. But I don't do those sort of things. And I think that's where the world is trying to manipulate people into a different thinking to bring a change. So that's a whole different story. But I do believe I can bring them to the water, and that can show that I still love you. I think the best for you, and I've got your back, but you've got a choice right now to whether you want to take me up on knowing how to facilitate for them to get that change. Now, that's a whole different story. Yeah, and I'm the person that goes, if you're soft, if you're the one that just wants to keep doing the same things, if you're the one that is at a point in life that you would rather do what is not serving you and you don't want to change. I know a lot of people who could help you out, and I'm not that girl. Right. So I'm pretty straight up, and I'm pretty strong on who I am and who I work with. But there is no shadow of a doubt that I've got your best interest. I will have your back. And there's a reason to that.
Yeah, great. That sounds like a very powerful position. And
but that's why I wonder why you've got this other powerful position and how that has worked for you. Because I look at patterns. And I've seen those, I used to work a lot in the front line of humanity, I always call it. So working a lot, I was a youth speaker for many, many years, worked with a lot of street kids, prostitutes, gangs, you name it. It was the low social echo that I got to work with, and it was awesome. And yet, one of the things that I realized was when I was there, and I might have been speaking, putting on a program for the community, whatever that looked like, things were awesome. But when I left, the young people went back to the old ways. And I just thought, all I'm doing is band-aiding a problem. And I didn't want to be doing that. So nowadays, and I really started from that time on to look at patterns. Why are some people successful? Why do some get results? And it doesn't matter about environment or the physical or the emotional or the spiritual or whatever the variables are at the table. For some people, they move forward. Others don't. What works, what doesn't. And I became fascinated with this. Is hence what I do today is, really narrow the gap from problem to solution, but really nothing's too complex because there's always a pathway. We've just got to find it. And, when I think of that and patterns, I look at what, is helpful for someone to get a change and what is not. In the case of, if I came, in fact, I probably would say to you that when people thought I was just this hard-ass Kiri Marie that would go, you got to have a change, it actually meant that people went away from me. So how do they draw to you to work with you when this is one of your principles or your things that you do?
Sure. I think I've chosen a particularly vulnerable subject to tackle in insecurity. People are insecure about being insecure, and most people will never face their insecurity. They'll run or hide from it for their whole life to the point of madness. So it's a difficult subject. However, the flag in the sand that I've pitched is to say, well, I'm convinced it's a predictable problem with a predictable solution. It will be some of the most difficult work of your life, but you can solve it if you want. And I too have looked at patterns, and I've looked at those who have solved it and those who haven't. And so the model that I've created was not so much that I invented, but I deconstructed what I'd seen work in the world. I'd seen those come out the other side and were really showing up in the world very secure with nothing to prove and nothing to defend. And in every case, they had a wisdom character in their world, and that wisdom character didn't get in the way. And so the modeling that I've chosen to represent and make explicit really hones in on that as a point of difference. And so when people feel like they can have a clean conversation, that is the game changer. They're afraid of what awareness will reveal. People, the human condition is, I want to be good, but I'm terribly afraid that I'm bad. And for fear of that badness ever being exposed, I'll run and hide for the rest of my life. So most of my work is like coaxing scared kittens out from under lounges with a saucer of milk, saying, you're going to be okay. Like, it's just, there is no monster. It's just the thought of a monster. Of course you're enough. You've just created this narrative that there's something wrong with you, and you've never gone back and reviewed it. So my job is to create a very clean and safe space for you to do all that review work. And I'll pollute that space if I bring too much of my own wanting in, too much of my encouragement, too much of my support. You created this mess, and you're the only one who can fix it. So my job is to serve you by creating a judgment-free
That is so interesting. And by the way, I'm so not into hand-holding. I'm not the soft, gentle one that goes, come on, I'll take you. Like, seriously, if you come back with your problem a year later and you're still dealing with that problem, I'm not your girl for that. Like, there are many other people that can do that. So I get a lot of that sort of side of it. And I love that in a lot of ways, what you're saying there. And I talk about curating in a new approach to leadership. I believe that this is about how we curate these spaces that are safe. How are you seeing that in the work that you're doing? How are you curating spaces, especially in a world that, change is happening so fast, and it's a certainty of the uncertainty?
The space that I create is purely with the individual. So, because again, insecurity is such a vulnerable subject, it's a difficult subject to talk about in groups. If I bare my soul and share what I'm afraid of, or what if, then that further exposes me. So, the space that I create is one-on-one. I haven't found a way to facilitate a deep change process in groups. So, I'm a coach. I'm a one-eyed coach. And I think that's
it's okay.
really useful for me to just to go, look, not every conversation has to be a coaching conversation. Not every you don't need a coach in every situation. Sometimes you need a mother or a father or a mentor or a teacher or a guru. So sometimes I'm not the right person. But when I get the opportunity to coach, I do it wholeheartedly. And my number one job is to create a clean space, because if we can have a clean space, then we can turn every light on, and there's whatever comes up, there is no implication. So there's nothing dangerous about what's revealed. So firstly, they're clear that I don't bring any judgment, and then I coach them through the process of letting go of their own self-judgment, which is more difficult than my judgment. That's the harder one, to let go of their own sense of shame.
Yeah, because we're really hard on ourselves, aren't we? And our expectations if we fail and things like that. But here's the thing, what I find interesting about that conversation is this, that yes, I agree that as an individual, it's easier to create a safe space. I also think, and it's a question that I'm asking you right now, and that is the reason that you go, I'm not sure how to do this in a group space, is because that space hasn't been created yet, or that there is so much in the society right now where you don't say this, you're not meant to look like this, and are we actually helping it by only doing it within the individual and not bringing it out? So what I mean by this is this, that one of the reasons I'm having these conversations on the decision table is I have no idea where we're going to go with this conversation. I have no idea who I'm meeting on the table at most of the times that I'm on this table. But I think, we could have a conversation in the private. And I used to have amazing conversations in the private. I felt like I was being selfish. I felt like I was being like I'm learning, you're learning, and we're holding other people back because we're not willing to kind of evolve together, because it's just not the thing that you do. You don't talk about some of these things in an open space. And so one of the reasons that I did this and go, hey, if you want to connect, if you want to have a conversation with me, I'd love to, but let's just press live at the same time. Right? Because I think I'm learning, you're learning about me as well and what we're doing, but in the same way, others can learn from this too. And we need to be having these conversations more out in the open for it to become more of a safe space as a wider society.
It's so beautiful, and so grateful for people like you doing that. That's incredible. I've had a few attempts at that. So I have my own podcast. I've written a few books.
Beautiful.
So that's my attempt at facilitating a more global conversation. But I get overwhelmed sometimes at the size of the problem, and when I get overwhelmed, then I get stuck myself. So my course corrective is, hey, Jamin, do your work. I say that to myself at least 3 times a day, if not more. Hey, Jamin, just do your work. And so my work at the moment predominantly involves a deep dive one-on-one with people, and the ripple effect. I'm always moved by the fact that if someone does the deep work around resolving their own insecurity, it's not just good for them, it's not just good for their partner, not even just good for their kids, it's actually good for the world. It's actually increasing the collective consciousness of the planet, even at a very small rate, but it is still part of the solution. So I don't have the answer to that question, and I'm grateful that people like you are creating more space in the collective for conversations like these, because
we need to have them, and we need to be willing to have it, and we need to go anywhere. This is where we need to have a conversation. And when I go about creating lenses and bringing awareness, we don't know what we don't know. I truly believe that that's okay to say that I don't know anything that I don't know. But I feel like that means I need to start learning and developing who I am, and a willingness to open up to maybe there's other perspectives, maybe there's other ways in which to think, and how have they come up with this? Maybe I need to take some of that on and put that into practice in my world. And I think the only way we can do that is if we start listening to each other. And, you know, you talked about the noise. I think there's a huge noise across the globe right now. I think there's this continuous noise of people trying to look good, sound good, and keep doing it all the same way and wondering why, in a lot of ways, those problems from problem to solution is just widening, not narrowing that gap right now. So, you know, we have these conversations because it's a starting point. And it goes back to what you said around awareness. You know, it's useless if all we do is just create awareness. Like it really, truly is. But it's got to start somewhere, and a willingness to start somewhere and have a conversation that maybe is uncomfortable. And maybe in that conversation, we might not even agree with everything that's being said. But you know what it does also? And I think that this is really important. Sometimes when you disagree with someone, it actually makes it stronger to why you agree with what you're talking about. And then in that way, you're actually more willing to stand strong in what you are bringing a voice to. And I think this, particularly in this world that we're in right now, we need to be standing strong at what voice we are bringing on the platforms that we are creating or do have. And in your case, you know, where does that overwhelm come from? Because, by the way, you're not the only one.
Yeah, well, I think I heard a distinction recently about the difference between passion and purpose. Nicole Hatherley, she said that passion, and because she said often people think they must be the same. But she said, well, no, passions are the things that light you up, that replenish you, that energize you, that are really about you. But purpose is not about you. Purpose is bigger than you. Purpose are the things that you kind of have to do that feel like a sense of calling. And so, I think about, write about, read about, dream about insecurity all the time. Like literally every night I'm having some kind of coaching conversation, running some kind of workshop, thinking about something I'm writing. It's all consuming. And so I look around at how insecure our world leaders are, for instance, and I think they are some of the most insecure people alive are the ones running the show for the rest of us. And I think, wow, how do I make a difference there? How does that problem get solved by what I'm doing? And so sometimes the problem seems so big. And that's the reminder, Jamin, do your work. It doesn't really matter how big the problem is. That's not your concern. The problem, your work is to keep talking about this clearly, intelligently, completely for anyone who will listen. And that's all your focus is. So
okay, so I do have to challenge you on that, because if you go, hey, I've looked at that, I've been consumed by it, I've realized that, some of the biggest ones that have insecurity are the ones that are leading in many really important roles. Isn't there then a responsibility of yours to come and bring some of that solution to the table?
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I don't know how to do that. I think about every time I go to my own journal, what do you want, Jamin? Like, where are you taking this thing? I dream about consulting to the UN. I dream about coaching world leaders.
Good.
It's sort of my awareness all the time, but I don't know how. And so when I get too caught up there, then I get stuck. And Jamin, do your work. Go back to writing, go back to speaking, go back to the person who's in front of you right now. And who knows, one day they may be a world leader. So that's where I'm starting. So yeah, you're right. It is a responsibility to try and solve it there. And I take that responsibility very seriously, even when I get overwhelmed about it.
I get it. And I love the fact that you're being so honest in the conversation right now, because, all of us have our own insecurities or things that I always say can hold you back, that can restrict you, mean that you don't move forward. Anything that's, going to do that means that we're not moving forward. In other words, closer to solution at the table. Like, we can live like that, and that's okay. And we can even say to ourselves, that's okay. But, those that want to play a bigger level, that really feel, and I guess this comes from beyond the passion to the purpose, that there is this calling, that there is almost a responsibility. If not me, then who? And if not now, then when? How does that come into the equation when you get to those moments?
Yeah, it's absolutely. I just had the great privilege of doing a 7-day rafting expedition down the Franklin River with a bunch of mates.
Wow.
2 weeks ago in Tassie, World Heritage wilderness, a very rare experience. And the tour guy was talking to me on the bus on the way back to Hobart and just quizzing me about the Insecurity Project. And I was speaking to him about why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I burst into tears halfway through talking to him. I can get choked up now even thinking about that, because it's that exact thing. It's like, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? It's like I'm ruined for anything else. And this is what I'll devote my whole life to, no matter what it costs. This is a significant problem, and people suffer greatly for not knowing how to resolve their own insecurity. They will shrink and hide, even against their own self, even in a way that horrifies them, but they don't know how to do something different. So it demands a conversation. And I feel that very deeply.
And you can be the one that has that conversation. But I think this is where there's a couple of things that come in play. I think that we have to get over. I remember saying, and it was my mantra for many, many years, no excuses, no limitations, no buts. And I would literally go, is this an excuse that I'm using? Is this a limitation that I'm saying that I have? Is this but moment, right? And that served me well for a fair while in my life. It got me until that became so in my decision DNA. Then I needed to shift it to the other side, and this is the question that I'm going to shift over to the other side for you. So you talk about our insecurities, but if we don't have insecurities, what can we have? What can that look like? What is that next piece?
Well, I think it's the title of my book. It's Unhindered. It's to
Beautiful.
Show up at your best where it matters most. If you're free to show up with nothing to prove and nothing to defend, I think then you can do good work. Then you can actually bring a gift. Your whole energy is not focused on filling the void around do you matter. You've got plenty to bring and actually serve other people.
And to me, that is humanity as stakeholders at the table. Like that is us coming back to going, if we are unhindered, what are we adding value to humanity going forward, not taking away from? And I love that piece. Speak more about that. Like, what does that really truly mean in the way that we show up, the culture that we build out in our organizations? What does that look like?
I think so much of people's energy is devoted toward proving that they matter. So much of people's work is, I will demonstrate that I'm good by what I can achieve or what I can have. You'll know I'm a good person by the car that I drive or the position I've risen to within my organization. That's how you'll be able to tell that I have value. And that often gets confused for purpose, because look at what I'm doing. Look at the contribution I'm making to the world. I'm convinced that it can't be our purpose to prove that we matter. Like that is our work. That's our adult work. It's to go back and review all the narratives we've created as children and all the limitations we put on ourselves, and to review those and remove those, so that then you can show up already confident and assured that you have value, that you are enough, there's nothing to prove or defend. Then you're free to connect with the purpose that's bigger than you and not even about you. And then you get to do good work. So, for the sake of the planet, that is the responsibility for each of us.
Yeah.
Moore's law says that the rate of technology advancement will double every year, and it has done since the 1950s or 60s. It's not slowing down anytime soon. So the great challenges facing us as a planet will not be technological. They'll be on the level of consciousness. Yeah. And if we don't resolve insecurity, we'll continue to behave in a way that's madness. So I think to be unhindered is not just this beautiful dream. It is the responsibility we have for the future of the species.
I
It's
love that.
it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Was your podcast called Unhindered?
It's called the Insecurity Project.
Nah, should be Unhindered. I love that. I really do, because here's the thing. None of us want insecurities. We've got to deal with it. But you're now giving me something. I want to be unhindered. I want to know what that's about.
Yeah.
And I just think, what is the conversation that you can have around that? That is just beautiful. I love that. And so here's the thing. We all have to deal with our insecurities. I've had to deal with them. I'm a major introvert. I am extremely introverted. The thought of ever having to talk to strangers was like something I really hated to do. I love to speak on stages because I didn't have to talk to people face to face, but I talked about something I was extremely passionate about. So for me, that was like legendary, and it felt so good. And I always liked being my name behind the scenes was secret sauce to a lot of the greats. And it's true. I've worked with some pretty cool people, but I've been the secret sauce behind them. And I kind of liked that. It was kind of cool and it felt good until I realized maybe my purpose was actually to help to bring it and to, across the global landscape. And if I was to do it secret sauce, that was going to be taking a very long time to be able to do that. And I needed to come out of that. So I had a lot of reasons to why I didn't want to do that, why that sounded like the worst thing ever. But all I knew was if I even spoke once, had a conversation with someone once, and maybe it's the person on the other side, maybe it's the one person that listened at that time, that I was being selfish because I wasn't giving that one person that opportunity. And I think if you've got a calling, if you've got something that is, you've got a platform to use a voice, then there is a responsibility for us to stand up no matter how insecure we feel. Because reality is we've got tools, we've got resources, we've got things that are much stronger and drivers that are going to take us through to the other side and even maybe help others and serve others in a bigger and a greater way. And I think that is so powerful.
Absolutely it is.
Yeah. And I want to encourage you because you have, like, I just love unhindered. Like that word is just going through my brain so much right now because I think it's such a beautiful word, and I don't know that I ever really hear it. I know it. Well, I think I kind of know it. Maybe I don't. Like it's something that you could really build something so beautiful on, and where I am now willing to take risks because I'm not living in that insecurity. I can lead an unhindered life. And to me, that sounds like, I don't know, such a great opportunity for possibility that maybe I hadn't thought of before. So, really that's powerful. It really, truly is. It's funny because I think that all of us have such a story of why we do what we do. And I think that part of this new approach to leadership is this willingness to evolve and for us to evolve as a human being. And I think that when you're a leader in your own right, that you are serving other people, anyone serving anyone else, or got a community or got followers coming after them, to me, that is classed as a leader, right? There is this expectation that we have it all right, that we've got it sorted, that we've arrived. And I think that's old school leadership. And this is part of the new approach to leadership, is that, I don't know about you, but I've definitely not arrived. I've definitely on a journey. I'm evolving. I'm always going to my next level of whatever that is as I continue to evolve. And I think that that's a really powerful space to be in for all of us. but it's something that we often, I don't know, I mean, I get to work in the coaching world because of one of the companies that I get to run, but in the coaching world, I think that it's, as a coach, you're meant to know it all, got it all, you've got the latest model, you've got that, but I think it's also very limiting because it's very it's not going to change much if you've already got it and you've already figured it out. Like, where's the fun and the next piece, the opportunity for going to huge acceleration levels? I don't know. Any insights?
Oh, no, I agree. I think the way that I think about it is I'm non-negotiable about smoking what I'm selling. So I think as a life coach, especially, the only way to survive in this industry and be valuable is to embody a message. So, no one wants to hear from a 23-year-old life coach simply because they haven't had any chance to embody it in real difficulty. Yeah, it would be very rare. So I think people watch. They go, well, does this look like it's working for you, Jamin? Does it look like we can see evidence of what you're talking about here? And so in that way, I have to go first and I have to demonstrate everything I speak about works.
Love it.
But at the same token, you're right, there's an evolution, there's a growth, there's the next thing. So, 3 weeks ago, I'm writing my next book at the moment, and it was a bit messy in the structure of it, and I was a missing piece, and I was sitting down watching the footy and crinkle cut potato chips, Melbourne bitter. Have
Excellent.
a particular penchant for crinkle cut chips. They're not getting any less delicious.
That's so cool.
And then had this moment of clarity. It's like, quickly give me the whiteboard and mapped out this model around a relationship change that I'd been battling with and hadn't conceptualized. And that moment, it's a moment of sheer joy, because it's like I just gave birth to something that hadn't existed before and I hadn't articulated before, and represents growth for me and will represent a gift to those that I work with. So those kind of moments where you keep growing and keep taking the next level and the next territory, they're breathtaking.
And here's the thing, you light up about it. So those that are in your world are going to be like going, wow, this is a whole new level. And that gives them hope and excitement and, something to look forward to. Okay, so if people want to know more about what you do and who you are, where do they go?
My parents gave me the gift of a uniquely spelt name. So if you can spell it, you can find me quite easily at Jamin Fraser, Jaemin, Fraser with a Z. I'm the only one of those guys in the world that I'm aware of. Or the Insecurity Project. If you Google either of those two, you'll find me quite easily. There's a podcast, a number of books, an insecurity test. If you're fascinated about whether insecurity is actually costing you and you're not aware of it, there's a cool diagnostic test you can take to have a look at that as well. So that's a few of the ways people can find me.
I love that. Do you have any major insecurity right now that is holding you back from your next level?
No, that would be very unkind of me to say yes to that answer, and not, if the answer was yes, it would be unkind to lie about it, but it would also be unkind if the answer was yes, because then I'd be lying to my people by saying this is a problem you can actually solve at the level of growth you currently occupy. So no, I'm unhindered in my current level of growth, but that unhinderedness is causing me to reach for new horizons, and inevitably I'll find new limits, new thinking that I've created that says this far and no further, and new insecurity will arise, but I'll solve it in the same way that I've solved it at other levels.
And that's what I love about that. That is so well said. And I think that it's true. Like, you have figured out to where you're meant to be right now and what you've been doing, but to evolve. And all of us are at that point where I always say at every level, there's different things that you've got to figure out. There might be have to change some systems, some processes, some thinking, whatever that looks like, right? And sometimes that comes with insecurity. So it's like, but you know that even though there may be insecurities, when you first start off going and starting to dream about that next level, but there's always a solution. And I always say there's always a pathway to the solution you need. And that's exactly it. So I love that. One of the reasons I don't, get you on here and go, who are you? What are you about? Is because a lot of people identify And, we just get stuck in kind of what you're used to telling the world. What I've loved about today is that I feel like I've got to know you. I feel like I've got to know what you're, not just what you are doing in what, your coaching world, but who you are and what you're thinking behind that. And for me, that's been a beautiful thing. But I do ask this question on every single decision table. And it's the one thing that is the same on every table. And that is, so it's funny. So first, I always say there's some fundamentals, and awareness is one of them. Then I think there's ownership. Then I think there's a change, and sustainability has to come into the last bit. Like, it's the footprints, it's the legacy we're leaving. And so in this case, we've had a great conversation today. I love how we've sort of questioned even just the way you think about it all. And but so you've created, like an awareness around something that isn't spoken often in securities, but is so important for all of us as individuals to be more effective, to make sure we're not letting it stop us. And so from our conversation today, though, what have you taken from it?
I feel energized and resolved to speak more clearly and more consistently. And if not now, when? And if not who? If not me, who? I feel more committed to give everything I've got for this sense of calling and this problem, and to find a way to solve this at a global level, to find a way to see world leaders not be insecure, and the key decision makers to not operate out of their insecurity. So thank you.
I love that. That's so good. And by the way, in the work that I do around the global landscape, one of the things that I'm realizing is so important in having conversations with leaders, and no matter what sphere it is you, me, we are the leadership, we are the global space. And when we bring it back to us as an individual, us as a person, then whatever we're doing is bringing change, or bringing negative or destruction or division, right? So like what you choose today, how you choose to do going forward, is making a difference across the globe. And I think that as soon as we realize that we are the ones that can make that difference, there will be difference being seen across the globe. And it's interesting, as I am figuring out, next week I'm actually having literally a closed door conversation with some leaders from across the globe that I've personally invited to a conversation like this, but in a bigger way where there's more. And looking at us as individuals, how can we be more effective as leaders, but then go, so what are you using your platform for to be the voice? And then as a collective, what are we going to stand by and have each other's back, and know that we're not on our own, but together we are making a difference across the globe? Because I think it has to get back to that simple going, what is it we can do? What is it we can measure, and know that in another quarter, that we've actually made some difference. We've dug some ground, sown some seeds. I don't know, done whatever it is. And I don't know what that is, because I'm only one voice at the table. I'm not the whole voice at the table. So there is possibility for this to happen. But I think first it comes up to us being willing to be, hey, what are we owning in our space? What are we going to be willing to do? And let's figure out what that is together, kind of moment, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So I love it. I love our conversation. What am I taking from it? You actually said this cool conversation. I wanted to write it down, but I didn't. If I write down, then I feel like I'm being rude, and you're probably thinking I'm ignoring you. And I wish I had written it down. But you said, and I literally can't remember what it is now. I'm going to go back and listen to it. But there was this cool little, and I go, oh, I like that. It was one of those, oh, I like it moments. And I literally said it. I remember. but it was profound, and I wanted to know more about that. So I'm going to go back and actually listen to that because I want to find out what that is. And then the other one was unhindered. I think there's some, I don't know. I don't know that I have the right definition, the way that I'd want to communicate even to myself, let alone to the world, what unhindered would look like. And I don't know. I think part of unhindered for me is the fact that I am willing to do and play in the space of what I know is my destination and what I'm called to do here in life, and that I'm doing that. You know, one of the things that I really learned, my mom died 2 years ago, and one of the things, like, it's one of those random things that I never get to ask anyone else this question, but I knew I could ask my mom. And that was, what's it like to die? And me and my curious brain, I was like, I just want to know what does it feel like? Whatever. What is that? And my mom didn't even hesitate to answer. And she just said, and she was a massive woman of faith. And she said, you know what, Kerry Marie, I'm so peaceful about where I'm going. But she said, but I haven't finished my work here on earth. And that really got me that day. And I thought about it for 6 weeks nonstop afterwards, but I haven't finished my work on earth. And I go, what if I was to live every single day knowing that I was doing what I'm meant to do today, which is what I'm meant to be doing tomorrow and the next day. And I think that is unhindered to me, is when I get to know that I'm doing everything humanly possible that I'm meant to do today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I totally agree.
Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with?
I don't think there's anything else. I think it's been a very rich and life-giving conversation that I'm grateful for. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And seriously, thank you for what you do, who you are, and what you're bringing as change to the global landscape.
Thanks, Kira Marie.
Appreciate you.